What's up guys, Miji here. Welcome back to my channel. If you are new to my channel, welcome. Today we're gonna be doing a sew along to my latest spring pattern, a 9754 View C the pants. All right, so this is not a learn to sew video. So if you are completely new to sewing, you might wanna check out my online courses at sewitacademy.com. Let's talk fabric. So these pants are amazing. You can make them out of just about any woven fabric, any bottom weight. You can use denim or linen or a poplin, even a sateen. Also remember that you are gonna need some buttons and some twill tape for these pants. And also remember that all of this information is always on the back of your pattern envelope. All right, I want you to cut your pattern pieces, cut your fabric, interface, and mark everything. Now let's sew. All right guys, we're gonna start with pattern piece number 9. This is the front of our pants, and pattern piece number 12. We're gonna go ahead and pin this right sides facing. So we have a notch here and a notch here that match up, but I find it easier to first pin the top of this. Now you have your stay stitching because you have stay stitching here along this corner, and then you cut into that corner to the dot, but not through the dot. So I'm gonna pin first here. Remember, right sides are facing. Okay, now you're gonna go ahead and basically swivel on over. And first align that notch, and then just continue pinning down. And now we can work the corner. Okay, now we're gonna head to the sewing machine and we're gonna stitch across and then around the curve. Okay, we're using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, now you're gonna pivot. Okay, you're gonna press your seam allowance up towards the top of your pants and then towards your pant. And then you're gonna go ahead and do top stitching. Now the top stitching is optional. You don't necessarily have to do the top stitching if you don't want to, but I am doing 2 rows of top stitching, one very close to the seam and then one 1/4 inch away. All right, we're gonna go ahead and do our front pocket. And so grab your front pocket and your front pocket facing. So on my pocket facing along the longest edge, you're going to turn under 1/4 inch and press. Now we're gonna go ahead and pin this to our pocket, and you have a notch, so just match up that notch. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and stitch this using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Then we're gonna turn it and do some understitching. Now while you're still at the machine, I want you to go ahead and push your seam allowance up towards your facing, and we're gonna understitch. Now go ahead and press your facing to the inside. Okay, once you press your facing to the inside, go ahead and top stitch close to the edge that you turned under 1/4 inch, and then I did a second row of top stitching 1/4 inch away. I also went ahead and did a line of stitching 5/8 of an inch away from the cut edge, just along the tall side, along the bottom. Don't worry about this side here because this is gonna get caught in your seam allowance. What you wanna do is using that stitching line as your guide, take your iron and then turn following that guide and press the long edge and along the bottom. All right, I've gone ahead and pressed along the long side and down the bottom. You're gonna get this little peak right here. Now what you can do is you're just gonna fold it to the inside and press it so that you have a nice clean finish. Now we're gonna go ahead and pin this to our front. Okay, we're still working with our front piece, and now we're gonna go ahead and pin our pocket. So you should have marked your dots where your pocket needs to go. So go ahead and pin in place. And you have a notch also on the side, so your pocket should be going all the way to your side seam. All right, we're gonna go ahead and first you're gonna baste your pocket to your side seam, okay? And then we're gonna go ahead and stitch along the very edge of our pocket, and then we're gonna go ahead and do a second row of top stitching. If you're doing your second row of top stitching, a 1/4 inch away. If you're gonna go ahead and do your second row of top stitching, go ahead and do it now, a 1/4 inch away from the edge. All right, so you should have done both your fronts the same exact way. Now we're gonna place them right sides facing. And we're gonna stitch until we get to our dot. So it's really important that one, you match up your seams, okay? So you wanna make sure that that's aligned. So I'm gonna pin there first. And then I'm gonna put a pin where the dot is so that I know exactly where to stop. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance from the bottom of the crotch up to the dot and back stitch. Okay, so we've gone ahead and stitched. Now I'm gonna go ahead and cut to the dot, but make sure you don't cut past the dot. Now you're gonna grab pattern piece number 14 and we're gonna go ahead and place it onto our front. So we're gonna start building out our button fly. I'm gonna open this up. We're gonna go ahead and pin this right sides facing on my right. And you have 2 notches. So you wanna make sure that you're aligning those 2 notches. And no, this piece is not gonna reach the very top of your pants, and that's supposed to look like that. We're gonna go ahead and stitch this using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm gonna make sure that I'm looking at the wrong side of my fabric when I'm stitching, just so that I can make sure that I stop exactly where that dot was, where we cut into it. Okay, while we're here, we're gonna go ahead and understitch. So you want your seam allowance to be facing your fly. And you're gonna stitch close to the edge. Now you're gonna go ahead and press your fly to the inside, and then you're gonna go ahead and just baste the top right onto your pants, okay? We're just securing it, so use a light basting stitch. Okay, I went ahead and pressed my fly to the inside and I basted along the top just to keep it in place. Set this aside for a minute. We're gonna go ahead and get the left fly facing. This is where you're gonna be doing your buttonholes. So go ahead and fold it in half, give it a good press, and make sure that you transferred where you're gonna be making your buttonholes, because we're gonna make them now. All right, so I've gone ahead, folded it in half, serged around to finish it off, and I made my buttonhole markings. So now you're gonna go ahead and, using your sewing machine and however your buttonholes are set up, go ahead and make your 4 buttonholes. Continue making all your buttonholes. All right, we're gonna go ahead and grab the fly. We're gonna place it just over the one that's there already. Okay, the edges are meeting. Your center front seam should be pressed towards the fly, okay? Now we're gonna go ahead and baste these 2 pieces together. You're not gonna sew through all layers. You're just stitching through both flies to keep them in place so that when we turn this over to the right side and top stitch, they don't shift. Okay, so really quickly, head to your sewing machine. You're just gonna stitch these together using a basting stitch, just so it can be secured in place. All right, so I've basted these together. I'm gonna go ahead and turn this to the right side. Make sure everything is laying nice and flat. I'm gonna go ahead and pin just so that I can keep everything together as I top stitch. Okay, now I'm gonna go ahead and do my row of top stitching. I'm gonna be doing 2 rows of top stitching, but again, the top stitching, whether you're doing 2 rows, is really optional. I wanted to mention this could be really helpful if you can't sort of eyeball it. I generally just eyeball it, but that's just me. What you can do is take your fly facing piece, turn under on that straight edge, turn under that seam allowance of 5/8 of an inch, and you can use this as a guide. So you could take a marker or your marking pen, or if you have chalk, and then just make a couple of dots along the way. And this will generally at least help you when you're stitching this together, so you're not just winging it. And now you can use the new dots as your guide. Okay, now I'm gonna go back through and make my second row of stitching on the inside, a 1/4 inch away from my initial stitching. Okay, while you're still here, your seam allowances should have been pressed towards your fly, so now you can go ahead and do your top stitching. I'm stitching a 1/4 inch away from my seam. And now I'm going to do another row right near close to the very edge. All right, so we've got part of our fly done. We're actually going to finish the other side once we get further along, because this doesn't have a waistband, it has a waist facing. And because of that, we need to finish a little bit more of the pants before we finish the remaining part of our fly. So we're gonna set our front aside, we're gonna grab our back pieces. All right, so you should have 2 back pieces. You should have pattern piece 17 and pattern piece 16. And you have a notch here and a notch here, and also you should have stay stitched from the bottom of the crotch up until that notch. Now we're gonna lay these right sides facing. I'm gonna first pin at that notch. You have another notch up here towards the top. And now you're gonna go around the curve. So I wanna make sure I pin at the bottom first. I just find it easier. Okay, once it's all pinned in place, we're gonna go ahead and stitch this using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Then you're going to press your seam towards your pants and you will do your top stitching. Okay, again, you're gonna press your seam allowance towards the pant, and then you're gonna go ahead and do your top stitching. All right, guys, you're gonna do the same exact thing to your other pieces for your back, and now we're gonna work on our back pockets. So you have a back pocket and we have a pocket flap. So let's go ahead and start with the pocket first. You should have had a fold line that you marked on your pattern piece. So you're gonna fold your fold line, right sides are facing each other, and you're gonna go ahead and stitch along the edge using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. So you're gonna be stitching this down, and then you're gonna continue that stitching line because that's gonna be your guide for when we're pressing this to the inside. You can also finish the raw edge here when we turn this down. You can either do a 1/4 inch turn, or I went ahead and just serged the edge. Okay, so you're gonna go ahead and clip into your corner and then turn this to the right side. You wanna make sure that you poke out your corners, and now you're gonna go ahead and press all the way around. So you're gonna press the top, and then you're, just like we did our other pocket, you're gonna use your stitching line as a guide to press your seam allowance in. All right, so you have a stitching line that was on your pattern. You're just gonna go ahead and do your top stitching, and then set this aside for a second. We'll attach both the pocket and the flap together. So grab your flap. I interfaced my flaps because I like for them to be nice and stiff. So I went ahead and interfaced one. You're gonna place them right sides facing, and we're gonna stitch along both short ends and along the bottom. You're gonna leave the top open. You're using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, you're gonna clip into your corners, turn your pocket flap right side out, push out your corners, give it a good press, and do top stitching 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. All right, so I've done my top stitching. I also went ahead and did my buttonhole. You're gonna do your other pocket and your other flap the same exact way. Now we're gonna go ahead and pin them to our back. Okay, so you should have transferred your dots where your flap is gonna go and where your pocket is gonna go. So I'm gonna go ahead and pin my pocket first. And while I'm here, I'm gonna go ahead and pin my flap. All right, we're gonna head to the sewing machine. We'll start with our pocket. You're gonna edge stitch all the way around your pocket. And then if you are doing your top stitching, you will again do another row 1/4 inch away from the edge. And then we're gonna stitch our flap down. If you're doing your other row of top stitching, go ahead and do it now. And then we're gonna stitch our flap down. 3/8 from the edge, you're just gonna stitch through. Now go ahead and turn your flap down. And you're gonna top stitch. So we're gonna lay our back pieces right sides facing. You have 3 notches, so align your 3 notches first. Okay, so you're gonna go ahead and stitch your center back seam using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Then you're gonna press your seam allowance to the left and do your top stitching. Okay guys, we are in the home stretch. We're gonna go ahead and pin our side seams together, and then we're gonna pin our inseams. So front to back, right sides facing, and pin. Okay, you're gonna do your other side seam the same exact way. And then we're gonna do our inseam in one straight long stitch. So I'm gonna first make sure that I'm matching up the seam, my center back and my center front seams. And I also wanna make sure that I'm matching up any notches or seams that are joining. Okay, you're gonna continue pinning your other inseam the same way and your other side seam. Okay, once you have everything pinned, go to your sewing machine using a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Start by doing your side seams first. I like starting at my hem and working my way up. I'm gonna do that for both side seams. For your inseam, you could do it in one continuous stitch, but I'm gonna start at the center, work my way down one leg, and then start back at the center and work my way down the other. All right guys, we're gonna go ahead and work on our carriers. So what you're gonna do is you're going to completely fold your carriers in half, right? Your carrier piece in half. And you're gonna press it in half like this. Then you're gonna bring each side to the middle and press so that you end up with both folded edges pressed evenly. Now you're gonna fold it once more onto itself, and we're gonna edge stitch. Now turn it to the other side and you're going to stitch along the edge. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and cut 7 carriers, and each one is gonna measure 3 1/4 inches. So I'm just gonna cut one and then use it as my guide. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and place these on our pants. All right, so you should have transferred your dots where you're gonna be placing the carriers. Now we're actually only gonna baste the top of our carriers for now. When we attach our facing to the top of our pants and stitch that, we will be catching the bottom portion of our carrier. So for now, you're just gonna pin it to the top at that marking. You have 4 carriers in the front and 3 carriers in the back. Okay, go to your sewing machine and you're just gonna baste the top of this. So the easiest way to do it is to just do a round of stay stitching all the way around. All right, we're gonna go ahead and work on our waist facing. So you have one that you cut on the fold, and then you have your two fronts. You should also have done your buttonholes. So we have a drawstring on the inside of our waist facing, and so you have markings on these two front pieces for buttonholes. So make sure and make your buttonholes now. And then with right sides facing, we're gonna go ahead and stitch the side seams together. And you have notches. Okay, head over to your sewing machine and go ahead and stitch these down using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, so I have gone ahead and pressed my seam allowance open, and I have also along the entire bottom turned under 5/8 of an inch and pressed it. Now on the left front opening, you're gonna go ahead and turn 5/8 of an inch and give that a press. Now we're gonna go ahead and pin this to our pants. Okay, so I have my facing, right sides facing, and the folded edge is flushed against the other side, right where our, the start of our fly began. I'm gonna go ahead and pin, match up any notches, and continue pinning all the way around. Okay, stitch all the way around using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now make sure to push your seam allowance up towards your facing and understitch. Okay, so after understitching, press your facing to the inside, and we're gonna go ahead and pin our facing down because we're gonna top stitch all the way around. So you wanna make sure that you pin on the outside, not the inside. For now, you're gonna leave your carriers or your belt loops free. Okay, let's head to the sewing machine and we're gonna top stitch. Okay, so you're gonna feel for your pressed edge and make sure you can notice what that marking is on your sewing machine so you can stitch it all the way around following your guide. Okay, while you're at your machine, we're gonna go ahead and stitch the remaining part of our carrier. So you're gonna turn in 1/4 inch on the bottom. You're gonna place it over your dot and you're going to top stitch. You're gonna do that for all of your carriers. Okay, once you have your facing stitched down, we're gonna go ahead and stitch around the remaining part, so the very top of our waist and also along the front edge here to close out that opening. So you're gonna close this out, stitch along the edge and stitch along the top, catching your belt loop, and you're gonna do that all the way around. Okay, we're gonna work on our right fly. So you're gonna go ahead and fold this in half, right sides facing. And I'm gonna pin at my dot. You should have a little dot. And then I'm gonna pin at the top. Okay, we're gonna use 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. We're gonna stitch across the top. Then we're gonna stitch from the dot down and across the bottom, again, using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and trim the bottom, trim the corner, and then you're going to cut to the dot, but not through the dot. And then you can trim this away. You can turn this right, oh, one more corner. Okay, now you can turn this right side out. Go ahead and make sure to poke out your corners. Now I want you to go ahead and press this down. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and pin this to the front. Okay, so you grab your pins So you're not pinning it like this where you're going through all layers, okay? You're gonna open this up, align the very top of your waist, and pin. Okay, you want them to be flushed up against each other. You also have your 2 notches. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and stitch this using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so I'm actually going to lift this up just so that I could get my presser foot under there. Okay, so I went ahead and turned and pressed 5/8 of an inch along this edge here, and I pressed my seam toward the fly. And so when you press it, you'll have a really nice finished inside on your fly front. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna go ahead and pin this in place, and then we're gonna stitch in the ditch. So I'm gonna turn this to the right side. I'm gonna feel for that fold, and I'm gonna pin. Okay, we're gonna head to the sewing machine and making sure that everything is out of the way and we're just working with our right fly, we're going to stitch in the ditch. Okay, we're gonna bar tack these together. You're just gonna be stitching through your fly pieces. Make sure your rest of the pants is moved out of the way. And you're just gonna do a couple stitches. You can also do a bar tack. All right, now that that's done, what you're gonna do is, I like to overlap my flies. I wanna make sure that it's overlapping enough, and then I'm gonna sort of hold this in place, and I'm gonna pin right here because I want to be able to do a quick little top stitch. I'm gonna go ahead and take my top stitching up about a 1/2 inch over where you see my pin, and I'm gonna top stitch here because I want to secure this. This gets a lot of tension when you're putting them on and off, so I'm gonna add more support here. Okay, so I'm only working on my top. I'm making sure that the bottom of my pants, the back of my pants, is completely out of the way. I'm gonna edge stitch. So now you can insert your drawstring, whether you're using twill tape or a drawstring like I am. You can attach one end to a safety pin if you don't have one of these little handy gadgets. I will link this in my YouTube description box for you guys. And you're just gonna go in through one buttonhole and out the other. Okay, now the very last thing for you guys to do is to finish off the hem of your pants. So you're gonna turn this to the inside and finish your hem, and then you're gonna make one more buttonhole here at the very top of your waistband. Use your marking from your pattern piece, and then you're gonna go ahead and sew on the rest of your buttons, and you are all done. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please make sure that you're following me on Instagram if you're not following already, at Mimi G Style, or on TikTok, also at Mimi G Style. I can't wait to see all of your makes. Until next time, peace.